Okay, so this is something that I struggle with, that a lot of business owners struggle with, that anybody who wants to sell themselves or their services struggle with. The freaking pricing objection. What do you do? I mean, you've been doing sales for about 12 years now. And you've heard the worst of the worst objections. But I think this is one of the most common ones, right? You say, hey, here's what I do. The other person on the other end of the phone is super excited, like, yeah, I love this, I'm gonna do it, but can you lower the price? What do you do when someone keeps hitting you with lower the price for me, please?
Right, so the way I look at a pricing objection, it's not really an objection, it's actually an excuse. People haven't found a way to say no to you for something else, and they might mask it with a price objection. So what do I mean by that? You are not able to convince them that they will actually get a change in their life based on utilizing your service or your product in a way that they have understood, or in a way that they can understand as well.
So they're not actually sure of or convinced of the results that they're going to get.
Yeah, they haven't visualized it, they haven't felt it, and sometimes you can do that through explaining, through words, presentations, videos, whatever it might be. But if you're having a one-on-one conversation with them, this is where your questioning comes into play, right? You ask about why they're concerned about the price. And they would say things like budget, which is mostly a lie. They would say things like, I can get it cheaper from somewhere else, which is also not apples to apples. So you really need to figure out what is it that is holding them back from trusting you and trusting that the service will actually be beneficial to them in some way, shape, or form.
Are there any other questions you could ask? So let's say I give you my offer, you say, no, it's too expensive. I ask, why are you concerned about the price?
Right.
Okay. And,
I mean,
are there any other like trigger questions I can ask?
So that's a very broad question, right?
Okay.
Why would you be concerned with our price? I would rather go a bit more straightforward, and this really depends on how open you are and what your relationship with the customer is. But you would start by saying, if price wasn't an issue, if this thing was free, or if someone else paid for you, would you still go ahead with the service? Now, there's two things that can come out of this. One, they say, no, everything else is fine, which is good. And the other thing is that they actually start telling you other things that might be getting in their way.
Okay, so that's how you uncover the true objection.
Yeah.
So someone hits me with a pricing objection. I say, if it were free, or if it were, half the cost, or whatever it is there anything else stopping you? They say either, if they say yes, great, we talk about that. If they say no, if they say no, it's literally just the price. I love everything that you do. Then what?
Then you stick to your guns.
Okay.
Next thing I would do is ask them a very hard-hitting question, which is, at what price would you go ahead, or what price is fair to you? Use the word fair to you, because you want them to empathize with you as well, as a business owner as well. So that usually gets a bit of silence. And here's a tip. Use that silence. Do not mess with that silence. Don't speak into it. Let it ruminate in their head when you use the words like, is this price fair to you? Or what price would be fair to you?
Okay, so you let them then give the number.
Yeah.
You say, okay, but what if that price is then lower than what you're willing
So the number they would give you, let's say it's from a competition, right? Let's say you have a very apples to apples service with someone else. Then it's your job as a business owner or as a product seller to know what the difference with that competition is. And you say, okay, if price remained the same, but if I matched their price and I had all these extra features or benefits for you, forget features, but benefits for them, then doesn't it make sense? You're changing their perspective of how price is a value, right? It's an intangible value that we've come up with, decided on numbers, and it's always in accordance with what benefit that they get with it. So if they do an apples to apples comparison, then you compare how your service might actually be better, or how they're missing out, or what they're missing out on by going with the other cheaper service, and ask them if they're okay with that.
Because they're getting that price point, the one where they're set the fair price point from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So you say, well, what is a fair price to you? They'll be like, well, a fair price to me is this. So you could then ask, like, how did you come up with that, right? You say, okay, how did you get to that number? And then they'll either say, well, the market, or it might just be like random. If they say, oh, it's random and it's not the market price, then you'd say, oh, well, this number, it seems like you're getting it maybe from the market or blah, 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 but let me tell you why we're better in the extra value you're getting.
Right.
And then that's how you justify it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I mean, this price objection has
there's layers. I know
there's so
we could
many
talk
layers.
about this pricing.
Pricing is, we can talk about forever because, as I said, it's an excuse for other objections.
Okay.
Right. But if let's say your service is actually unique.
Yeah.
This is when it gets actually a bit more powerful. When they have nothing to compare your service to, it takes a bit more to convince them why your price is right, because more likely than not, you're also coming up with a price with a random formula.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not a widget that you're applying a 30% margin. It's a service that only you can do and only a few people in the world can do when you come up with it, right? So that again, then the conversation cannot be about price.
And it has to be about value.
It has to always
We are going to do more of these.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about way more objections later on, guys. We're going to dig into pricing more too. But I think the takeaway for today is that price is usually an excuse.
Yeah.
Help uncover what the other objections are by asking that question. If this were free, would you have any other issues? And then get them perhaps to ask what's a fair price to you. And then help make a comparison of that point. Be like, oh, here's why we're better than the market, etc.
Right.
And always talk more about value.
Always about the value.
Okay. This was insightful. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that, guys.
Hey, thanks guys. Thanks, Alina.